spaghetti for tea? Hello, my name's Chris, what's yours? And welcome back to Marathon Man, where I'm going through Doctor Who from the very beginning, and you join me midway through Season 8. Last time I wasn't keen on the Doctor's attitude, despite a kind of like authoritative bluster permeating this incarnation's character since he took over. And wasn't a nice feeling. I don't mind questioning the Doctor, I don't mind being shocked by the Doctor. And I don't mind the Doctor keeping me on my toes. In fact, that can be very rewarding. The first Doctor going to cave Zara's head in, the second Doctor willing to sacrifice Jamie and Zoe, those kind of things. Shocking moments, but with enough of an explanation for them. In that first instance, the Doctor was yet to feel the impacts of that Barbara and Ian would have on his character, and in the latter, it's basically the trolley problem. He's weighing up how many lives he can save. But I don't want to dislike the Doctor, which is what happened at points in The Mind of Evil. So it is with a considerable amount of relief that I find myself rather charmed by him again in The Claws of Axos. First of all, this carries with it an example of how to use this Doctor's forthright nature in a much more satisfying way. When he's first introduced to the petty, slimy bureaucrat Chin, he definitely picks the right target for his direct bluntness. Having a pop at Chin's England for the English attitude is what I've been missing from the Doctor this season, and it was this appropriate use of this righteous fury which was so sorely lacking last time. When Pertwee's on form, he can command the whole show, and do so with considerable flair. And this small-minded attitude that Chin has is precisely the sort of thing to which the Doctor is the antithesis. Coming up against it like this, and not even a parallel or an allegory for it, this is the genuine thing. Coming up against it like he does, and puncturing it in this way, superb. For me, it's superb for a couple of reasons. First of all, I don't think it can be ignored whenever the Tory Doctor debate rears its, less than pulchritudinous mug when it comes to the third Doctor. He very, very obviously and clearly positions himself away from that ideology, far more explicitly than either Doctor before him. And second of all, it always reinforces something I've always questioned. This rarely wins me many friends when I've brought it up on fan forums in the past, such as Gallifrey Base, although, to be honest with you, the timeline means Outpost Gallifrey is probably more likely. And I think I also mentioned it in my video for the Savages, and that is, I genuinely have zero idea how some fans can be fans. I truly have a very genuinely difficult time understanding how a character like the Doctor and a show like Doctor Who can appeal to some of the sensibilities that they hold. This dichotomy baffles me, and that little scene with Chin always brings a smile to my face as all of those thoughts run through my head. But then certain people swear blind that Doctor Who reinforces beliefs from the other side of the political spectrum. So who knows, maybe Doctor Who is just a mirror for what we believe. But getting angry and sneering at an England for the English belief, yes, I mean that's pretty blatant. Regardless, The Claws of Axos is off to a fantastic start. Feel like it's a step up from the last two stories. Even as early as halfway through the first episode, there's incident, and there are different characters responding in different and interesting ways to said incident, which contrast with one another. And those conflicting reactions serve to provide the story with forward momentum. The Doctor is naturally curious, the Brigadier is naturally suspicious, and Chin sniffs out an opportunity for great profit. Now we can get on with the story and see how all of this plays out. There is a slight hiccup, however. After being given what, looks like a thoughtful and sensitive arc in The Mind of Evil, Jo is instructed to stay out of things again. That she doesn't and gets involved in the plot anyway was always going to happen, and it can be argued to actually not shortchanging her. But it still comes after her being told yet again to stay behind, and it really only results in her getting captured because she didn't do as she was told. So it's a far cry from the interesting stuff she got last time, and it again means that Jo isn't really making the mark I feel like she deserves to be making. For my money, and this will be a controversial statement, she is the least well-served companion since Dodo. Luckily, Manning really is excellent, and her more than adept efforts at playing what I think is a not very well-defined character at this point are making her a very valuable addition to the cast. So therefore, while I still think that Jo has got a lot of ways to go in terms of her treatment by the show, Katie Manning is proving herself to be incredibly important. When it comes to companions, she perhaps does the most out of all of them with so very little. And it's entirely through her performance that Jo is as successful as she is up until this point. Obviously, I know that she will come to be handled far, far better. But all I can say is thank goodness they cast Katie Manning. Thank goodness as well for the continuing presence of Roger Delgardo. Now, I know that it does seem like a crazy decision to have the Master appear in every story, but when it does, it reminds me why I actually like the decision whenever I reach this point on marathons. I mean, I'm never entirely sure whether this was the original intention, but watching in order and in context, when you get to this season, it's almost like the audacity of him popping up in every single story of Season 8 becomes the surprise in itself. The Mind of Evil. Oh, the Master's back. That was quick. Well, I guess, he is trapped on Earth. I'm sure they won't put him in the next one. The Claws of Axos. Oh, well, 3 in a row. That makes sense, I suppose. Still, I bet that's it. And so on. Alright, I don't actually mind the thinking behind having him show up throughout this season because it's a new idea to Doctor Who to have a regular cast member be a villain. So the idea for me is sound. And that's even before I get into how much I actually like watching Delgardo anyway. Him showing up hasn't grown old by this point because I love watching the guy. And the Master's introduction to this story at least rings the changes a little bit. Previously, he's shown up in cahoots with an alien invasion force and been double-crossed, or we join him quite a way down a long and drawn-out plan being put into action before it all goes tits up. Here we meet him and things have already gone tits up for him, because the alien invasion force he was already in cahoots with have already double-crossed him. He's their captive rather than engineering anything plot-wise, and therefore it's because of this really that I think his inclusion here feels a little bit more organic. Yes, it's the third time in as many stories that we've crossed path with him, but his different integration here gives him different motivations. He just wants to escape. And there's a different edge to Delgardo's performance here as a result. Already a class act, once again, he brings the goods. There's a certain facet of acting that a lot of people in Doctor Who find themselves having to do, and he is, without a doubt, the best one at it. Talking to yourself acting. Talking to yourself can sound and look very, 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 very jarring, but he makes it look so smooth. What is also more apparent in this story than the previous two is that he has made the Master a fun character and given him a sense of humour not that dissimilar to the Doctor.
What else can we do?
Oh, nothing very much. Oh, I suppose you can take the normal precautions against nuclear blast, like sticky tape on the windows and that sort of thing.
That's delivered to perfection. By giving this sort of Time Lord eccentricity to the part, he has once again blurred the lines between friend and enemy. I can totally believe that these two characters once shared a very deep, profound friendship, maybe even relationship. It's so much more than a villainous turn. Delgardo has turned the Master into a very real character. And yet, even though his double-crossing at the hands of the Axons doesn't exactly rehabilitate him into being a truly formidable foe, the fact that he's such a strong character is for me what matters more. And the fact that I consider the Master an infinitely more successful character than I do a villain doesn't impact on my enjoyment of him. I actually think it informs it, and I find myself drawn to him in such a way that I may have to admit something that will basically be Doctor Who sacrilege. At the end of episode 3, something potentially huge happens. Able to destroy Axos, the Master says that the Doctor and Jo will die along with it, and shouts down the Brig's protestations that it's either that or the world will be destroyed. What I find myself doing is imagining a parallel dimension where this is Pertwee's swan song. And not just Pertwee's, the Doctor's swan song too. The Doctor is dead, the Master is now stranded on Earth in his place, his vital TARDIS component destroyed along with the Doctor. Now Unit's prisoner, the Master is offered a reduced level of incarceration by working for them as their scientific advisor. Delgardo is the show's new lead, and from there we continue on with a tantalising arc of the Master becoming Earth's defender, hero before earning a pardon from the Time Lords and continuing to travel the universe benevolently. I find myself imagining that and a little bit wanting it to happen. Obviously, that would never have happened, and genuinely I am glad that it didn't. But I would really like to visit that parallel dimension where it did. He has such a nice rapport with the Brigadier in their interactions together that I really could see it working. Back to the genuine claws of Axos, and there comes another humdinger of a moment where the Doctor proposes escaping Earth with the Master. This feels seismic, and the reason it feels so impactful is that it kind of makes sense. The Doctor is trapped, and he's spent such a long time saying that he doesn't want to be. It's a shock that he leaves, and Manning really sells it. She is potentially solely responsible for that moment having the impact that it does. She grabs the opportunity to play something really interesting, and she knocks it out of the park. Obviously, it's a ruse, and I've seen this story so many times before, but it's all done so well that it could be genuine. And here I think I myself was more affected by it precisely because I thought the Doctor was a in the last story. It rings so true that he'd leave that even though he's tricking the Master and Axos, it's eminently plausible that he means it. As for the Axons, well, I think they are a success. All variations of them work well on a design level, but what's most successful for me are the reasonable tones of the Axon voice. It's soothing, it's calming, and consequently it is sickeningly sinister. And if all that wasn't enough, a Season 8 story that I finally unequivocally enjoyed, we get to see the inside of the TARDIS for the first time in ages. It's simultaneously quite disconcerting and comforting seeing Pertwee for the first time in it, being the Doctor precisely where the Doctor is supposed to be. So, a lot of little triumphs all add up to a really entertaining story, and after 292 episodes, this story was the splash of water I needed. A bit more of this side of the Doctor, a bit more care taken to Joe, and all will be grand. And I got through reviewing the Claws of Axos without mentioning Pigbin Josh. The Doctor's reaction to Chin.
If I could leave, I would. If only to get away from people like you.
Doctor?
And your petty obsessions. England for the English, good heavens, man.
This may sound hypocritical after my criticism of the Doctor in The Mind of Evil, but I do detect distinct differences between there and here. And here, it's pitched just right. I think I might have to go with Paul Grist's American accent. Nice character, nice performance. Just find his voice a bit weird. As ever, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this Delgardo loving, then you know how YouTube works. Please do give it a like and share it far and wide. I would be super grateful. And what do you think of the Claws of Axos? Is it an improvement on the 2 Season 8 stories so far, or does it represent a mid-season dip? Is Roger Delgardo this story's MVP, or does that honour go to Pigbin Josh? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you back here soon for the 3rd Doctor Off-World. So if you don't want to miss that, hit the subscribe button, clang the cloister bell, and I'll meet you on Euxarius.